the Sigma INFJ carries a double weight. Their own emotions, layered, complex, often overwhelming. And the emotions of everyone around them, absorbed almost unconsciously. They see. They sense. They feel. And while this gives them an extraordinary ability to connect, it also means they live in constant danger of emotional overload. The quiet kind. The invisible kind. The kind that no one else notices until they finally withdraw, vanish, or shut down. But the Sigma INFJ doesn't just collapse under the weight. They develop unique strategies, silent rituals, sacred habits. This is how they cope with emotional overload. Not with drama, but with discipline. Not by exploding outward, but by restoring inward. Part 1. They retreat before they break. Unlike many, Sigma INFJs know their limits. They can feel emotional saturation coming like a storm on the horizon. The crowded room starts feeling heavy. The conversations begin to blur. Their body tenses. Their mind spins. And instead of forcing themselves to endure, they step back. They leave early. They cancel quietly. They create space before the collapse. This preemptive retreat isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's knowing that protecting their energy now means saving themselves from weeks of emotional recovery later. To others, it may look antisocial. But to them, it's survival. Part 2. They turn solitude into medicine. For the Sigma INFJ, solitude isn't just a preference. It's therapy. When the world has pressed too close, they retreat into quiet. Not to wallow. Not to punish. But to reset. They walk alone. They write. They sit in silence and let their inner world rearrange itself into order again. In that solitude, they don't need to filter. They don't need to decode. They don't need to carry anyone else's energy. They return to baseline. To the self beneath the noise. It's not isolation. It's recalibration. Part 3. They create mental maps of emotion. Most people feel emotions and react immediately. Not the Sigma INFJ. They analyze. They map. They turn emotions into patterns. If they feel sadness, they ask, where is this coming from? Mine or someone else's? If they feel anger, they break it down. Is it righteous, reactive, or inherited from someone nearby? This analytical process gives them distance from emotional chaos. They don't drown. They study. By transforming emotions into data, they reclaim control. And in doing so, they prevent overload from turning into breakdown. Part 4. They guard their inputs relentlessly. The Sigma INFJ knows that not all overload comes from people. It also comes from information. The constant scroll. The endless news cycle. The overstimulation of noise, drama, and content. So they curate. They unfollow. They mute. They turn off the flood before it hits the shore. This doesn't mean they're uninformed. It means they're intentional. Because they know their mind is a sponge. And sponges must choose carefully what they soak in. Part 5. They use creative expression as release. When their emotions pile too high, Sigma INFJs don't always talk it out. They channel it. Through writing. Through art. Through music. Through building worlds that translate their inner chaos into beauty. This isn't hobby. It's therapy disguised as creation. Because while they may not always trust others to hold their emotions carefully, they can trust the page, the canvas, the instrument. And when they pour themselves into expression, the overload dissolves, not by being erased, but by being transformed. Part 6. They withdraw energy without warning. One of the clearest signs that a Sigma INFJ is overloaded is sudden withdrawal. The texts slow down. The invitations are declined. The presence fades. They don't announce it. They don't explain. They simply disappear into quiet. And while others may take this personally, it's not rejection. It's regulation. They don't withdraw to punish. They withdraw to protect. Because if they don't, the emotional noise becomes unbearable. Part 7. They anchor themselves in routine. Emotional overload creates chaos inside. So the Sigma INFJ grounds themselves with order outside. Simple routines. Morning rituals. The same walk, the same tea, the same journal page. To others, these habits may seem insignificant. But to the INFJ, they're lifelines. Because when emotions spiral, predictability feels like safety. Structure feels like control. And these small anchors keep them steady, even when the inner waves rise high. Part 8. They rely on selective confidence, rarely, but deeply. Though they're private by nature, Sigma INFJ sometimes share their overload. But only with people who feel like sanctuaries, not spectators. They don't vent to everyone. They don't scatter their pain across an audience. They choose one, maybe two trusted souls. And when they finally do speak, it's deep, real, honest. A release that feels more like revelation than conversation. This selective sharing prevents exploitation and allows them to receive empathy without fear of being misunderstood. Part 9. They learn to say no, without guilt. Emotional overload often comes from overcommitment. From saying yes when they wanted to say no. From holding too much for too many for too long. But with time, Sigma INFJs learn. No is not cruelty. It's protection. They stop over-explaining. Stop apologizing. Refuse to sacrifice themselves at the altar of others' comfort. And in doing so, they create space to breathe. Space to feel. Space to exist without collapse. Part 10. They alchemize pain into purpose. Here's the most powerful coping mechanism of all. The Sigma INFJ doesn't just survive emotional overload. They use it. They extract lessons. They sharpen intuition. They deepen empathy. Every wave of overwhelm becomes material for growth. Every breakdown becomes blueprint for clarity. Every emotional storm becomes wisdom they later use to guide others. Their overload becomes their alchemy. And what once threatened to destroy them becomes the very thing that defines their rare strength. Conclusion: overload doesn't break them, it builds them. Yes, the Sigma INFJ feels more than most, sees more than most, carries more than most. And yes, it overwhelms them. Occasionally. Quietly. Deeply. But they are not victims of this intensity. They are the architects of it. Masters of their own coping. Strategists of silence, solitude, and meaning. They don't escape emotional overload. They integrate it. They turn it into depth, clarity, compassion, vision. Because for the Sigma INFJ, overload isn't the end. It's the beginning of transformation. And that's what makes them rare. Not just that they feel more, but that they become more through what they feel.